right, I got no set intro for this, but it's going to be the DFC Culture Changers podcast, episode number 1. And I got my boy Antonio, we call him Draco, my first ever client to really allow me to train him and to like really just listen to me and listen to what I had to say when it came to fitness, when it came to mindset, when it came to all those things. So I'm super excited. I got a couple questions, but I don't even know how to do this podcasting thing. Honestly, I just wanted to flow like a conversation. I wanted just him to do most of the talking, him to share his experiences over the past, really it's been 8 to 10 months at this point. So with all being said, we're going to be moving the camera. It's going to look a little bit janky from there, but with all being said, this is Antonio. And I just want you to start from the top and, just let's just go back just 2 years ago, since you've graduated high school to where you started college, where you're at college now, and overall just, kind of a little bit about your journey, not getting too deep.
Like fitness-wise?
Yeah, fitness-wise, sure.
I kind of new to lifting and taking fitness pretty seriously. It kind of started my first year in college, like 2021. I was really exposed to the gym because I was at UCSD my first couple years in school, and my roommate, he was super into the gym, and he would ask me like to come and to kind of work out with him whenever, and like I was like super scared, like super intimidated by the gym because I had never lifted in my life. Like I was super intimidated, like I said, by getting in the gym. But he was the first one to kind of like introduce me and show me the ropes, and I just kind of tagged along whenever he would go. And so that's kind of how I started. And then as time started going on, I got my own gym membership, started going like by myself more frequently. And then like soon after that, that's when I met Dame and started showing up to the DFC more and started getting more tapped into, training splits, eating right, all those things. And so, I would say I've been taking my health pretty seriously for the past couple of years. And then it wasn't until recently, of course, hopping on the program with Dame and really dialing things in. And like I said, I was at UCSD my first year and a half of school, and then I transferred to SMU in Dallas. And so that's where I am right now. And that's kind of a little gist of, what's going on.
That's sick. So one thing, I'm kind of glad you mentioned it. You mentioned that you didn't start when you were hesitating about starting to work out because of fear. It sounded like your friend in the past would invite you. You didn't want to go because you didn't really know what to do. You were a little bit scared to actually get started. So I did want to talk obviously a lot about personal development today. That was like, the main thing I want to talk about. So I guess the first question, we can go right into this concept of fear. And I want you to think about how you used to view fear in the past. Let's just say like before you started the gym, like right before, that right after high school type period. How did you view fear in the past? And then how do you view fear now? Something that's changed, a little perspective change.
For sure. Yeah. I feel like definitely in the past, like I would always look at fear as this, just like this intimidating task that, I would really back before, a couple of years ago, like I would get into my head a lot. And so if there was something that, I was avoiding or whatever, like I would beat myself up about it internally. And that would obviously lead to me not having any action and not doing something more productive or effective. And I feel like now when I do have those emotions, those moments of fear, I feel like I'm more able to kind of know that it's an emotion, it's a fleeting feeling, emotions come and go, and to not have it like kind of like disable me or not kind of have it paralyze me like it used to. And I feel like now it's kind of allowed me to, like I said, act upon it and make more rational decisions. Like I said before, I would get in my head a lot, and so that tends to obviously make things a lot worse than it is. And so now I feel like I'm able to look at things more at face value and then act upon it more effectively, for sure.
That's sick. I've definitely noticed that a lot in you. And one thing So you mentioned paralysis. Like paralysis used to be something that you would experience a lot, especially when it comes to fear. Like you would analyze a situation and you would analyze it too much to the point where you had paralysis and you used to not take action. But now you do take action, and we can all see that. I mean, just based on what you do on a day-to-day basis and where you're at now. But I kind of want to talk about, why do you think you used to go through this paralysis through analysis, and why do you think so many people, in our culture, especially today, are paralyzed by taking action? I think we can both agree that we see that a lot, with a lot of people staying in their comfort zone, staying, not taking action, not taking any risk. Why do you think, that analysis or paralysis by analysis is so common in our generation?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like that paralysis for me, and I bet it can relate to other people as well. You're kind of scared of what other people will think, when you mainly don't want to fail. And obviously, failing can have this negative connotation, especially, you think it's embarrassing, you don't want to look bad. And you can kind of have this negative relationship with failure. And I think more so, what I've learned just, with talking with Dame, working on myself more, I feel like those feelings of failure, like failure doesn't have to have that negative connotation. A lot of good things can come from failure. And so that fear of, like I said, embarrassment, fear of failure, that shouldn't be what you should be focused on. You should look at failure and taking action in more of a positive light, because obviously we know, like, that's where the true growth happens. I'm sure you guys can point to a lot of moments in your life where maybe things didn't work out the way you planned, but there's always something good that comes out of it. And I'm sure you can point to those moments and see that it can actually be a good thing. And so, yeah, I feel like that's something I learned, as time has progressed, and something that has helped me. And like I said, I think that's a problem with a lot of people, really. They look at, they have a fear of taking action because of having this bad relationship with failure for so long.
100%, bro. I like that. And I like to think of things in terms of equations. And just to add on to what you say before I ask your next question, I always think of the equation. It's like work plus work plus work plus work equals failure, which equals lesson, which equals improvement. But you got to do the work first, then you got to fail, and then you get the lesson. You don't get the lesson before doing the work or the failure, which is basically, what you just said, which I love the answer. And it goes perfectly into the next thing that I had here. And I think you already answered the question. And if you did, you can just say you did. But I think you could build on it even more. You mentioned that you think in the past, the biggest thing that was holding you back and the biggest fear that you had was what other people would say, or how other people would view you if you failed. So what my question was going to be is, what do you think was the biggest thing that held you back in the past from just working out? But more because obviously last summer was when you started taking personal development very seriously, with the reading, the great habits, just all these things that we practice now, right? What do you think was holding you back from picking up those great habits in the past? But just think about you a year and a half ago, when you were probably working out, but you still had a good amount of vices. Why do you think you held on to those vices for as long as you did? Do you think it was what you already said, where you feared what other people would say, or do you think there was more things playing a part in that?
No, yeah, for sure. There was definitely, like you said, that fear of what other people would say. And I feel like a big breakthrough for me was listening more to my conscience and, my gut feeling. And I feel like growing up, I didn't really do that. I didn't have the clarity to, listen to my conscience, what my conscience was saying. And so, I would have a lot of these moments where, my gut was telling me, don't do this. You shouldn't be out. You shouldn't be, partaking in these activities, these, like you said, these vices. But I wouldn't listen to it, I'd be like, nah, it's fine. This is what everyone's doing around me, or this is what quote unquote the norm is, or whatever. But I felt when I started taking that voice seriously and started doing more of what I think is right, which is, doing the habits, working out, eating right. I feel like that's when I had the most just peace and clarity. Like I remember talking to Dame I was talking to him a couple months ago, and I was reflecting on like this past semester, like this fall semester. And I was like, bro, like I was like, doing pretty good, like on keeping on track of everything, on my habits, working out daily, eating right, all those things, like reading. But one thing that was like bothering me, or always in the back of my mind, was like my wake up time wasn't consistent. And like, I would have stretches where I would be really consistent, and then I remember I would fall off. I would wake up late, and like I would still get the things I needed to get done. I would go to class, find time to get in the gym or whatnot. But like, there was something always bothering me. Like I couldn't explain it, and I knew it had to do with me making kind of this deal with myself to wake up early, and I wasn't doing that. I wasn't doing my part of that agreement with myself. And this semester I took that more seriously, and I was super consistent on my waking up very early every day, and getting what I needed to get done completed. And I feel like this semester in particular, like a lot of good things have just came into my life. A lot of just mental clarity, like I said, but just like random things. I feel like, Wes Watson, one of the guys that we talk about a lot, he says like when you're aligned, like everything else is aligned. And I feel like this semester in particular, like a lot of good things have happened to me, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it's the semester that I took, all of my habits seriously. And so, going back to, listening to your conscience and doing what that voice says. And, again, like going back to Wes Watson, he says like your conscience, like in a lot of cultures, they say that's the authentic voice of God. And so when you're going against your conscience, in a way, if you follow this saying, like you're going against God, you're going on the path that he's outlined for you, and you're going on the exact opposite path. And so it could get really spiritual as well, like that voice, that gut feeling. And so I felt like once I started listening to that voice more, a lot of good things have happened and occurred. And I feel like I've always had that voice, but like I said, I just would never listen to it, and would continue to do things that weren't that I wasn't supposed to, that weren't on my path. So yeah, that's something I would say for sure.
100%, bro. You're dropping some bars right now. And one thing though, like we touched on it, when we ate before this, or I guess I kind of mentioned it, and it's all about conscious congruency. And it's this sense that we all have that voice in our head. We all do. And when that voice is calling you to do something, for example, for you, it was just telling you to wake up earlier, but there's a lot of people who could be watching who they don't have like any of these good habits built yet, right? But their conscience could just be telling them to start stepping in the gym. It could be telling them to start waking up. Instead of waking up at 10, wake up at 9. Instead of drinking 4 times a week, you drink twice a week. Then you cut it to 1, then you cut it to none, right? Everyone's conscious is telling them to do different things. But we kind of touched on it before. If you have that conscience, which we all do, and you don't answer that call, it causes that cognitive dissonance, which is basically everything that you just said, right? And it's when you have two ideas. For example, let's say that your conscience is telling you to start waking up earlier, and that alarm goes off and you click snooze. There's that part of you that said you were going to wake up earlier, and then there's that part of you that clicks snooze. You can't have two contradicting thoughts or ideas at once. And that's what causes that lack of confidence, you not living in alignment, that lack of self-trust. And that's what I think you can agree with me, that a lot of people in our generation, our culture experience, where maybe their conscience is not telling them to wake up early because they haven't even done step 1. They haven't even passed level 1 yet. You know what I'm saying? But their conscience could be telling them, I need to drop the drink. I need to stop, I need to stop going out so much. Or I need to stop, trying to sleep around. Their conscience is telling them to do that. But then on the weekend, they do it again. And that cognitive dissonance gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So that self-confidence gets lower and lower. That self-trust gets lower. That self-belief gets lower. And I think you can agree that's what a lot of our because you're talking, I mean, your experience this last semester, you were already killing it. And now your conscious telling you, all right, you got all these other habits in line. Wake up earlier now. There's always other levels. There's always other levels of progression. But I want to just bring this up because like there's a lot of people who are watching who their conscience is not telling them to wake up earlier. They got other things to worry about. We all have different things to worry about, you know? Like I conquered my wake up as well, and now my conscience is telling me to do something else. But it's so important that whatever your conscience is telling you to do, you listen to it. Because if you don't, that's cognitive dissonance, and your mind is always going to want, like for example, let's say you didn't listen. Let's say you didn't, and you spent this whole semester up to this point not waking up early. You would be on this podcast right now saying that you're still, you want to wake up early. Like the once you want something, it doesn't leave your mind until you do it. It doesn't leave your mind until you do it. So think of all those people who they said they were going to stop drinking. They said they were going to stop sleeping around. They said they were going to stop smoking, but they haven't followed through. So it's always going to be in the back of their mind until they actually conquer it. Right. So I just kind of wanted to build on what you said, bro. But yeah, I love what you just mentioned. And the next thing that I want to talk about was habits. And you already touched on it a lot. And I was gonna ask a question that was in correlation with habits, with clarity, and you touched on both of those things already. I mean, you're kind of like just killing the game. But I want to ask, what do you think is if you can name one habit, man, it's gonna be hard, but if you can name one habit that you think has brought you the most clarity, which one would you say would be?
The most clarity? Dang, that's hard. No, that is hard because I just talked about wake up, and that for me, right now that was a big one. But I overall, if I had to choose one habit, honestly, I would probably say the reading. The reading is something that kind of just completely changed my perspective. I mean, for me personally, I can speak for myself, but I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate. Like I never read outside of school. If it wasn't assigned by like a teacher or professor, like I wasn't just reading in my free time, you know? But once Dame put me onto reading, and just like I feel like when I tell people, oh yeah, like, you know, I like to read books or whatever, they think like that's like such a nerdy thing or whatever, but it's like 10 pages a day. And so 10 pages is what I honestly like to take my time with it. Like I like to annotate it and like sit there and think. And so 10 pages will take me, you know, 20, 25 minutes, maybe 30 minutes max. But that's such a small portion of the day you're utilizing. I mean, I feel like when I tell people I read every day, they think like I don't watch TV or like I don't like watch YouTube. But anyways, that's just whatever about people think about reading. But yeah, I'd say in general, reading has just drastically changed my outlook on life, especially because there's so much game in books. There's so much knowledge in books. Obviously, I mean, we live in such a digital world. You can watch a podcast or a post or whatever of, you know, your favorite influencer or whatever speak about, you know, a really good topic. But even the greatest speakers in the world can only fit so much into a minute clip, 30-second clip. And just think about how much knowledge and how much wisdom there is in like a book. I mean, I'm sure all of you, the people watching, you know, were in school, like writing an essay. Think about like a 3 or 4 page essay. Like that's a lot of words. Like that's a big word count to finish. You know, you have to put a lot of effort and work into that to fill up those 3 to 4 pages. Think about like 200 pages, 250 pages, and what these ultra successful people, you know, can write about and explain and, you know, expand on these different lessons or whatever. And so I feel like reading for me, and I talked to Dame about it, as I'm reading these different books, it's crazy to see a lot of parallels and to see a lot of these different books from different fucking time periods. Like you read Napoleon Hill, that was like in the 40s or the 1930s. And then you read Marcus Aurelius, which was in fucking thousands of years ago, BC, whatever. And they're talking about the same things, the same principles. And so when you see these parallels and these great authors talking about the same things, it just further cements these lessons, and it further like I said, cements it in your mind to live by. Because obviously, if you know a number of these really successful people in history practice and live by these lessons, it's a good thing it would be a good idea to live by them too, And so, I would say if I had to pick one, reading for sure. Yeah.
I'm very glad to hear that, because I'm a big advocate for it. I try and get everyone that I have a conversation with to read. And my favorite quote, I remember hearing this quote so long ago, and I say it over. I think I actually heard it from Jim Rohn, but I heard it from Frisella first. So it's like Frisella got this from Jim Rohn. Success leaves clues. They have the same messages, but it was like, you can learn it in one of two ways. You can either learn through your own life experiences, which is getting kicked in the nuts over and over and over and over again. And yes, that is the best way to learn. But do you want to get kicked in the nuts for your whole life? Or you can learn lessons from books ahead of time so that you're prepared. Preparation is the key, right? Life is preparation. And I think that's what these books do for us. And I like to think of this too, like an author can put a lesson that he learned that took his whole life to learn, and he could put it in one book for us. We can take 3 weeks to learn one whole life lesson. It's massive. It's super massive. And I'm very glad to hear that. And now we talked about what habit that you added that made the biggest impact on you. But we know that success is subtractive. You have to get rid of things before you add things. Truthfully, I think anyone who's watching this or listening to this, before you make progress, you have to be willing to make sacrifices. So I want you to, maybe it's one thing, maybe you give 1 to 3 things, but what do you think are the biggest things that you got rid of that allowed you to, I guess, make the biggest level ups or experience the most growth?
The biggest habit that I subtracted from my life, I think first thing that comes to mind was one of the first ones that I started subtracting, and it was like the drinking and like the going out. And for me, that used to be like a big part of my life, doing that and whatever. But I mean, me and Dame were just talking about it over lunch. Like, bro, nothing comes good out of drinking. Like, if you think about it, like it's always it's just a low frequency act, and to partake in that and to participate in that on the daily, like for most days of the week, as a lot of people our age do, like that's just not setting you up for success. And I feel like once I stopped drinking, that really just helped me gain more clarity. One thing that I like to think about is on one of Andy Frisella's podcasts, he had one of his guests, Connor, I forget his last, I know Dame knows him, Cozen, yeah. And it's this guy, and he's like super successful, has his own business, posts on social media or whatever. And he talked about his relationship with drinking and how he thought about it. And I think he was having a conversation with his mom, and he was like, I felt like for, ever since he started drinking, let's say from 18 to 28, he said for those 10 years from 18 to 28, it was like, he had like no clarity. He gave his mind no chance to have any type of clarity, because when the weekend rolled around, or when Thursday or Friday rolled around, of course he was drinking, getting super, super drunk and not being able to make any rational decisions. And it's like when he wasn't drinking, he was like recovering from drinking and like in this hungover, another low frequency state. So he was just always in going back and forth from low frequency state to low frequency state. And he's like, he never gave his mind any clarity or any opportunity to reflect or really have any productive thoughts. For real, bro. And so when he shared that, I feel like I kind of resonated with that heavily. And it gets super deep. I mean, obviously when you go out a lot, you create a circle. You're hanging out with a certain type of people, and we all know like the people you hang around with, like they determine your future. They determine how you move, how you think, and ultimately your outcome. So if you're hanging out with a bunch of degenerate, people, you're obviously not gonna build the future that you want to. And I feel like that dropping that vice for me was was huge. For sure.
Yeah, and I mean, the next thing I was going to talk about was environment. That's basically what you finished up on, and now I want to dig a little bit deeper into it though, and I want you to give your opinion on what I guess what does environment mean to you first of all, like why, when it comes to the culture changers in the community that we've been able to build and that we're a part, so blessed to be a part of. How have you noticed a positive community impact you in a positive way? And then you can even think about negative environments in the past. How did a negative environment impact you? I want you to just talk a little bit more about environment though.
No, yeah. I mean, I can't say, how much this community has changed me and impacted me positively. I mean, a lot of good has happened, being a part of a group of people who, really want the best for themselves and really want the best for each other too. I said this earlier, in our chat, like I truly feel this though, like a lot of my accomplishments that I've had lately, like this community is the backbone of all of my accomplishments, truly. Because in going back to what you said, like environment is so key. And I think environment and culture just really sets the standard and sets the precedent of like what you do. And environment's also so important, especially when everyone's pushing each other, because I feel like we all have like an innate like desire to like not want to be the worst. Like we all want to be better than each other. And so when you have this environment of everyone's who's just like super successful, super highly motivated, that, naturally is going to make you want to step up your game. And so I feel being in this community and again, with surrounded by a lot of highly motivated people, that's definitely, shaped a lot of what I do. And even like with the wake up time. So I talked a lot about wake up time and how that affected me. And how a lot of good things have come from that. Like what I consider early and what my wake up time has been that I don't miss, like I haven't really missed. I've maybe missed like 2 days so far in this year. I mean, we're in March. And so I've been waking up consistently like 5 a.m., 5:15, get out of bed. And so to the average, 21-year-old, that's freaking super early, right? 5 a.m., especially on the weekends, to wake up at 5 a.m. daily, that's crazy, right? But obviously when you're in the same room as this dude who fucking wakes up at 3:15 a.m., like it's not that crazy, and that pushes me to like, eventually, like pretty soon I'm gonna like up my wake up time and wake up even earlier. And so that just shows obviously the levels and the effect of, a good, healthy environment. And so, there's just a little insight of, the community. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely, bro. And what you mentioned about like a lot of things that you've been able to come across and be blessed with this year, you think of the community as being one of your backbones, which obviously puts a huge smile on my face when you even said that. I love to hear it. And I can say the same exact thing though. I could truly say the same exact thing. The fact that my environment, whenever I am down, I have that beautiful paper up there behind the wall that no one can see, that's, you guys giving me positive reinforcement, positive messages, and my community's positive messages allow me to think positively, and then I start to act positively, and then my energy is positive. And it's kind of just evident through this podcast, and us being in the same room, it's that high frequency conversations, where we don't talk about what we did in the past so much as we talk about the goals that we have for the future, what we've been attacking the past couple months, for example, you mentioning over the past couple months, you've really locked in on that wake up time, and now you're mentioning you want to level it up a little bit more, probably when you go back, instead of 5:15, it's 5, and then it's 4:45. But it's this idea that we're always trying, compete. And I think I didn't have this as one of the questions, but competition is something that I would love to talk about, because I think our generation really lacks competition. But what are your thoughts on competition, and how do you think competition can be healthy, especially for someone who's watching who maybe doesn't have a very competitive environment? How do you think competition could benefit them? And why should they start to compete more, even if it's with just themselves?
No, yeah, that's a good point. Obviously, competition can be a very healthy thing. I feel like the the way in which we use competition in our community is like, I mean, we say it all the time, like, we're not calling you out, we're calling you up. So it's not, if Dame's like, hey, you need to work on this. You need to get your macros better. You need to stop eating so much junk food or whatever. He's not saying like, oh, Antonio, whatever, he's like a slob. He's a shitty dude. He's not saying it in a personal way, a personal attack against me. He's saying, okay, I see where you are right now, and I see where you can be. And, I see, a lot of potential in you, and I see you doing great things, and I'm gonna use my advice and give you so much insight so you can get to that place, because I want to see you win. And so in that kind of manner, and with that little example, I feel like that's how we use competition, as a really good thing. Because at the end of the day, like, it's so cool being a part of this, where everyone wants you to be better. Everyone wants to see you happy, achieve your goals. Like, no one in the group has any sort of animosity towards one another. It's like such a healthy thing. And so when we have these little like competitions, or who transformation, whatever, it's like you want to have the best like results or whatever, but at the end of the day, like I said, everyone wants to see you win. And so it's a really positive thing. It's not something negative. It's not in a negative light as many people might view it as, competition, in like a I feel like we always grew up with competition, like in a sports sense. If you're competing against someone, you kind of outline them as the enemy. And like, obviously there's a time and place, whatever, if you want to use competition in that sense. But we're talking about, we use competition within our community in like a more positive light, and to really get the best out of one another. And so, yeah, I think to your point, like, I think that's really cool what we do.
Yeah, you mentioned like, we all want to have the best results. And I was having a conversation with Eric just the other day, and you mentioned how there's no animosity but within each other. And Eric, we were literally talking, he said this basically the same exact thing, where it's like Alfonso, as of late, sending his runs, every single run, he was like, I don't have any animosity and I'm not envious at all at that. Like, that motivates me. Him sending his runs, him trying to beat himself, him trying to beat his own time. It's like everyone's literally trying to go to battle to beat themselves. And then when we see that as individuals, we then want to work harder on ourselves. And it's genuinely just genuine care and happiness for the other individual, I guess, for a lack of better terms. But I did want to end this at 30 minutes. We're going a little over, but this question I think can get really, really good. And I want you, if you have to think about it for a second, think about it for a second. I think it's a classic question that every single podcast honestly has when it's in terms of personal development, especially. But it's, if you could tell your former self, and let's talk about that former self, like senior high school, when probably that worst shape, like, worst shape physically, mentally, maybe senior high school, right out of high school, whenever that time was for you, right before you got into the gym, right? Let's go back to then. And if you could tell that individual one thing, what would you tell him?
Ooh, dude, that's a tough question. One thing. Oh my God, I feel like I just want to sit down with that dude, bro, and like have like a talk like this, like an hour-long talk or something. Honestly, if I could pin out one thing, I would just say listen to your gut, and just to follow it, and to stop worrying about other things, and to just focus on what you want to do. And yeah, just listen to your gut. Whatever your gut's saying, just go for it. Don't think twice. Don't care what your parents say. Don't care what your friends say. Just follow it, and don't look back. I feel like that is at the core of a lot of the things that we preach and we do. And going back to, your conscience and your gut feeling, and that being, the voice of God, I feel like that's just in general a good starting point when I'm kind of unsure about what to do next. I always just take a step back and focus on what feels right and what I know is right and just where I think I need to be and go from there. And I feel like if I were to tell, like I said, myself from 2 years ago, I would tell him so much more, but I would start by that and just to not care what anyone else says and follow your gut and do what you want to do. And I feel like that there could be a lot of good from that. So for sure, yeah.
I really, that was going to be the last question. I'm messed with that answer. I love that answer. I can completely agree. That's one of the things that I would 100% tell my former self as well, as I was very, very scared of, especially with the public eye would say. Yesterday was the 2 years of Dame Fitness, and I mentioned that I remember the first post that I ever made, I was very concerned at how much likes the first post got because I just wanted it to be accepted. Yeah. I wanted to be accepted. I was very fearful at how other people was going to view this move that I was making, a move. But it was me just getting out of my comfort zone, and the path is illuminated as I've walked it, and I think that's what you can agree. Fire, yeah. That's what you can agree the same way, right? That, you had a lot of uncertainty when you first stepped into the gym, when you first started picking up good habits, when you mentioned dropping the drinking was the biggest thing for you to drop. When you first dropped the drink and you said no for the first time to going out on the weekend, you probably had a lot of uncertainty. But as the time has gone on and as you've practiced these good habits and eliminated these bad habits, everything's just become more clear. And clarity was a word that you said a lot in this interview, in this podcast. And I'm glad that it sounds like you found a lot of clarity through this process, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And I know everyone watching or listening could experience a lot of clarity if you just practice positive habits. I think if you were to summarize this whole thing in one sentence, the one thing that you've done, if you could summarize in one sentence, it was, you've listened to your conscience to pick up positive habits and drop bad ones, which has turned confusion to clarity. Yeah. That's what it literally says. Exactly, It's beautiful in one sentence. But I wanted to ask this last question. It's kind of, it's not for fun, but it is for fun. Mm-hmm. We talked about what you would tell your former self 2 years ago. You could tell your former self one thing. Now, what if you could just imagine you had a room of a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds, our generation, the people that, we really want to help. If you had just a whole room of them, what is one thing that you would tell them besides listening to their conscience?
Dang, a whole room of...
whole room of them. And they're all looking up to you. They're going to listen.
One line.
It could be a couple sentences.
I don't know, bro.
Think about this one. I want you to think about your experience, what your journey has been over the past 9 months, as you've made different sacrifices, different investments, and just think about your journey. That's it.
I would say, you got to have some type of habits or routine. We talked about it. It's the essence of core of what we do. You got to have some type of personal development routine or type of schedule that you want to do and stick to it. We talk a lot about one of Wes Watson's quotes is, what is it? Your success will never
surpass your level of personal development.
Exactly. Personal development is at the core of whatever you want to do. And over lunch we were talking about this too. Wes Watson, he talks a lot about he'll get people and they'll be like, yeah, well, I had all the money, I had all this success, and I still wasn't happy. And then his answer is because you were there, and you suck at being you, you stink, just because you have no level of personal development, you don't work on yourself. And I think that's where not only have I seen a lot of that mental, we talk about clarity, happiness, my mental health just get way better, but that's also just where your success will come from. If you just constantly work on yourself and, like we said, getting better, and constantly checking off these habits every single day, there's no way you fail, in whatever you want to do, whether it's school, whether it's creating your own business, that's stems from personal development. Any type of success you have will stem from personal development. So I would just say, find a schedule, find habits, look at people who you want to be in, successful people who you want to emulate, and just follow what they do. what is their morning process like? What do they do on the daily? What habits help them? And copy that, emulate that, and stick to it. Because obviously you could have all this knowledge in the world, but if you're not like personifying these teachings, then you're just talking out of your ass, like anyone can do that. Anyone can talk about it, but it takes, a real G to actually practice these habits. So I guess if I were to give a little spiel, to a big group of people, I mean, that's what I would say for sure.
And I won't do any more talking, because I want to do one more question real quick. I thought about this as you were speaking, because you're talking about personal development. I loved it, and you talked about at the end how you have to really stick to it. So for you, if you can give a quick 60-second reply, and this can get as personal as you want, I don't know, it's up to you, but what is your why when you don't want to do it? Because there's obviously been so many times over the past 9 months that you didn't want to do it, but you've stuck very, very true to it. So what because obviously everyone wants motivation, right? Mm-hmm. But we understand, and I think everyone understands, that motivation doesn't stay. It's discipline. So what is your why, or what is the thing that really keeps you going when you don't want to do it? What keeps you going?
Okay, yeah. I would say my why, again, when like those days come around where I don't want to get up and do what I have to do, I feel like what gets me going is this belief that the work and the success that I have can inspire at least one person. Because I been fortunate enough to have met people like Dame, and to give me a lot of knowledge and things about whether it was working out or just living an overall healthier lifestyle. And I've seen how that has affected, again, my whole life. Like, these are habits that I'm gonna carry with me for the rest of my life. That's affected, obviously physical appearance. We talked a lot about mentally as well, but that's affected like me, like the people around me. Like, I think of like my family, my mom and my dad, like they have seen, they have been affected by my journey as well, and seeing some of the things that I've done. And so I know all these good things that can come from personal development and how it's changed my life, and like I said, the people around me. And so if I were in the position to give that to one person, even if it's just one person, like, I mean, that's just like a no-brainer. Like, that's amazing. That, like, I don't even know, like, no words, if I were able to inspire and help change just one person's life. And so I think that's what gets me motivated, and seeing the response from some of the people who maybe have taken just any type of inspiration from what I've been doing or what we've been doing with the community. Like, I think that's just so cool. And so yeah, I think that's been my why, and that's honestly what's gets me through all those moments of adversity, if you will. So yeah, for sure.
Yes, sir. And with that being said, I'm gonna cap it off on the camera. Hopefully, what we got going on right here on the computer works all well. But if anything, I'm going to be able to edit this, put it up on YouTube. I appreciate your time, bro. I think this is an amazing, amazing interview. It was a pleasure to be able to let you really take the floor and share what you've learned, because truthfully, I think everybody observing you can agree that you've made, some immense progress. That is, you mentioned impacting one person's life. I think you already know that you've already impacted one. So if you can impact one, how many more can you impact? There's no number that you can put on it. You can impact one, you can impact many. So I'm damn proud of you, bro. Thank you again for taking the time. I hope that everyone watching or listening got a whole bunch of value out of this. And yeah, bro, with all that being said, appreciate you, big dog.
Thank you, G. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.